Hey, this is Dave Pryor. Welcome to Agile 2019. Here in the Leading Agile booth, we're doing interviews with speakers and thought leaders all week long. So if you can't make it to the conference, you still get a sense of what's happening. And right now, Mike Cottmeyer is taking time out of his busy day. He's actually got to give a talk in like an hour and a half or something like that.
Hour and a half, 3:45.
Yeah. So at 3:45 today, Mike's going to be talking about organizational transformation.
That is correct.
Which is kind of a massive topic.
It is a massive topic.
So where are you focusing today?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, for anybody who's been following my content for a long time, it's just a build of the same core story.
Okay.
And what we've been doing at Leading Agile for the last 9 years, we just had our 9-year anniversary the other day, which is pretty cool. August 1st. Yeah, that was awesome.
It's a 10-year anniversary we need to focus on.
10-year anniversary next year. Yeah, we got to stay in business for another year to be able to pull that off. Yeah. So
then it's just game over.
No problems.
Yeah, whatever after that.
We hit 10, right? All bets are off. Yeah. So it's just a really build of the story. So like what we introduced last year was we basically took everything that we had been doing and we had put it into a very kind of clear, coherent frame. And so we start talking about like why we're doing an Agile transformation. So we lead off with the business case and what it is that we're trying to accomplish by investing these dollars in doing change.
Okay.
And then we go into a section around, I call it transformation hypothesis, which is looking at all the different factors in the organization that are going to influence the transformation, and having a very solid plan for what you're going to influence and how you're going to influence it. So like different levels of scale and different kinds of dependencies and different kinds of organizational resistance, because all of that stuff is going to influence how you orchestrate your transformation. And then we go into some of the theory and approach things that, and again, anybody who's been familiar with our stuff for a while, the 4 quadrants, the 3 things, right, all that kind of stuff, teams, backlogs, working tests, and software. We talk a little bit about the reference architecture, kind of in the context of, if you look at SAFe and LESS and all the different methodologies, they all have like a common core.
Yeah.
And so what Leading Agile's chosen to focus on is not the methodology, but the common core. And like, what do we have to get right in order to be able to do this at scale? Talk about change management, talk about results management, how do we measure progress against the business case? And then some interesting things we've been talking about for the last year or so is around how to like structure roles on a transformation. What are the different skill sets that you need in a transformation? We talk a little bit about what Leading Agile is doing from a people perspective in terms of talent identification and making sure that we have the right people in the right roles doing the right things.
Okay. So and I'm going to be interviewing Marty later about transformation offices.
Oh, okay, excellent.
But
that's a cool topic.
There's a couple things you just mentioned. So when you talk about LESS or SAFe or any of those other approaches, it's about we're going to be agile, so we're going to use SAFe because we're really big.
Sure.
Or whatever, they have the picture and stuff is great. So you mentioned that for us it's about why.
Sure, it starts with why.
So instead of just saying, let's be agile because we have to be agile because everyone's agile, what are the more common business reasons people get to when they start to dig into that? Because I'm assuming they often don't have an answer.
Well, so you'll ask people sometimes, why they're doing the transformation, and it's interesting when you take it from like a practitioner perspective. A lot of times it's because we want to empower people and want to have great teams, we want to have a great work environment, and we want to have like all this freedom to be able to decide and listen to customers, and all that's like legit, right? And that's there. But if an executive is going to put millions of dollars into doing a change initiative
and turn their whole organization
upside down, and candidly to put that level of political capital on the line, there's something that they're trying to do. There's something that they're trying to improve. And in the talk, I go into things like predictability, the ability to make and meet commitments, early return on investment, getting things into market faster, quality, cost savings. Sometimes it's innovation. Sometimes it's product fit. And one of the big arguments that I try to make is regardless of whether we as practitioners or coaches think that return on investment for the organization is important, that's the thing that gives political ground cover to the executives that are sponsoring it. So they can turn back around to the people that they're requesting funding from and say, we did these things and we achieved these results, and here was the economics of those results. Okay. And so it's super important. And so just nobody's going down this path of adopting Agile because they just want to adopt Agile. They want to be the cool kids, right?
Right.
It's just like it has to be economic.
Well, they are going down that path, but it's not with the success or the outcomes. They don't know what outcomes they need.
Well, just really pragmatically, when I got super focused on this and started working with the team around it, we were growing as a company, and we were getting into larger and larger organizations, and the size of these transformations that we were given stewardship over was getting really big. And so sometimes the executives were approving much larger SOWs than we had done early. And when you're spending more money, the visibility is way higher and the accountability is way higher. And so that's the reason why we start with the business case, because whether you're engaging external consultants or whether you're building an internal team, because an internal team of 20, 30, 40 coaches is not cheap in and of itself, right? That's an investment that's being made. It's incumbent upon change leadership to make sure that they can justify why they're doing those things. Yeah.
So you also mentioned organizational resistance.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious about that. Is there a way that you measure that, or how do you understand it?
Well, so when I talk about it today, I'm talking about it a little bit more intuitively. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can do like stakeholder maps and understand like strengths of relationships within the organization and who's a resistor and who's a supporter and all that kind of stuff.
Though, isn't it? It's like
I think it is. I think it is subjective, right? Okay. But one of the things that I got really clear on a couple years ago was this idea that, at this stage, most of the time, transformations are sponsored from the top, right? So the executives are like, yes, we're all in. That's awesome, right? They're spending money, they support it, right? All this kind of stuff. And then, you get most of the people on the ground that see, this is pretty cool. This is a good way of doing things. I'm going to be given some more freedom, some more autonomy within constraints. And so it's easy to enlist the people that are doing the work. Mm-hmm. What happens a lot is that, and this is almost cliche, but like the managers in the middle seem to be like where the challenge is, and but I don't mean that in a snarky, dismissive
no, I know
way,
what you
right?
mean.
And it's like what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out how do we engage those people, how do we give them valuable, meaningful work, how do we create safety for them in the transformation, and give them a path forward. And one of the stories I tell is about a leader that I had worked with a while ago, and I got to know a little bit about her personal situation. And she's like the primary breadwinner in her family, and she has kids that are going to college, and she's got a mortgage, and she's got all this stuff. And so one of the things that I impress upon people is that when we're introducing Agile into these organizations, and we're asking people to change, they don't see as clearly as we do the path and how this is going to be better for them. Okay. And even if we think it's better for them and we think it's better for the organization, it might not be better for them depending upon what they value. And if it creates uncertainty for them in their confidence in their ability to do their job, or it undermines, their 25-year work history, right? They're threatened because they've been doing it a certain way, and now they are being asked to do it a different way where they're not as good at it. You're not just threatening somebody's professional life, you're basically threatening their family, right? And when I got really clear on that, and I also kind of realized that most bad behaviors in organizations are a result of individuals that are scared, or they're afraid for something anymore. Right? They don't know what to do. And so I think if we're going into an organization where there's a tremendous amount of executive level support and a tremendous amount of buy-in from the troops, then it's incumbent upon us to create safety for those people in the middle and to help them understand how they can be successful in the new world. Okay. But just having empathy for the fact that that's the thing that they're scared about. Yeah. It's not like, hey, I'm just resistant to change and these Agile guys, I don't like it. It's like, it's scary and it's meaningful, right? Because you got to go home and say, I lost my job, or you got to go home and say, I wasn't promoted, or and it's like, that's like jacks with people, right? It's real stuff.
Can I try to?
Yeah, sure.
So I always think of it like you got the support above.
Yeah.
You got the support below.
Yeah.
And the thing in the middle that's like the cartilage that's getting squeezed is the PMO in that middle layer.
Yeah, sure.
And the middle layer understands that the top wants to go Agile and understands the teams are doing Agile, but they're often still feeling compelled to provide the same kind of reporting, the same kind of metrics upstairs, still get it done on time, on budget, but be Agile about how you do it. Yeah. And there's no explanation of how. Like nobody was coaching that layer. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about giving them a path. How do you help them see that and feel safe about that?
So it's interesting, right? So Back when I was getting introduced to Agile, I was working for a company called Check Free in Atlanta, and we had really kind of that exact same thing. We had some amount of organizational support. We were doing some really cool things at the execution layer, and a lot of my point of view was shaped by the fact that we were able to take like our team-based Agile metrics, and we were able to roll it up and to communicate to the PMO, schedule variance, cost variance, use all kinds of different burn rates, how we were making progress. And so I think Agile gives us a ton of tools to create safety for a PMO. I think a lot of times our language, the way that we think about Agile at a practitioner level is about just empowering and letting people go and just inspecting and adapting and figuring it out. But I think what you're talking about is that these organizations that have PMOs, they have large complex systems that they're trying to build
that were built to control.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're spending significant organizational dollars to achieve an outcome, and it's insufficient for the organization to say, hey, I trust you, you're empowered, go make the best possible decisions, and totally take their hands off the steering wheel. And so to responsibly manage a portfolio of dollars that are being spent to achieve an outcome, you have to be able to baseline a plan. You have to be able to execute against the plan. You have to be able to measure progress. And if there's going to be variance from the baseline, you have to be able to communicate that and understand impacts and be able to talk about trade-offs in an economically driven way. And I think a lot of the language around Agile at the practitioner level sometimes is very much like when you start talking about that, it's very much like, well, that's not Agile. And I go, well, so it creates a tremendous amount of cognitive dissonance with me, but within the organization, because the organization is spending non-discretionary dollars to achieve a specific outcome, and it's not that they want to be command and control or micromanage or whatever. The problem is that they have fiduciary responsibility to deliver that outcome for the dollars that they requested, and they have to manage it. So if we're going to be responsible as Agile practitioners, we have to stop saying, well, that's not Agile, we're not going to give you any information, just come down to the team room, look at our boards and what have you. Like, we have to come up with ways that are congruent with our values and principles to be able to communicate that information up. Right? And that requires a bit of intentionality. And so one of the things that's kind of interesting is that SAFe, what it's brought to market is a bit of management control around that layer. I will tell you, in some early stage transformations where there's lots of dependencies and lots of complexities and the organization hasn't fully untangled itself so teams can operate autonomously, sometimes you need more control. Sometimes you need more planning than even SAFe is recommending. And that's a fine early stage pattern because if you take away I'm going to say control, but I don't want to overuse the word, right? If you take away the way that the organization is measuring progress and you don't replace it with something, right? Well, then the organization's flying blind. And whether that's, and I would even say whether that would even work is debatable, but even if it would work, it creates a tremendous lack of safety. And you're basically just saying, trust this organization. And the organization might not have proven itself trustworthy just yet. Right? It might not be great at making meeting commitments or delivering on time or what have you.
But even if, one of the things I found is that if I go to senior leadership and I say, okay, we're doing this stuff now, we're not going to give you the old kinds of reports about utilization or whatever. What reports do you want? They only have the answers of Gantt chart, utilization, stoplight report. Like they don't know other questions to ask.
Yeah, so but there are other questions to ask, and we have to educate people on what tools are available to you to responsibly manage your organization without resorting to, really cost-based analysis. The things that are like, how much does a person cost? What's their utilization? What are they being applied to? What kind of activities are they getting done? And it's very much like flipping from a cost accounting model to a throughput accounting model. And ideally, at the end result of a transformation is we would like the complete cross-functional team to be the unit of value.
Okay.
And that's the cost side of the equation. And then what we want is we want that team to be able to measure its throughput, and so we can start understanding the value that it's able to create over time. Okay. And so when you look at the team as the unit of value or the unit of throughput, and the features or user stories that are moving through that team as the way that it's creating value, you can start to look at the size of the backlog, you can start to look at the rate of the burn against the cost of the team, and you can start to anticipate, and this is just Agile 101. This is like all Mike Cohn's Agile estimating and planning thing. That's where it all came from. Is you can start to anticipate how that team is moving through the backlog and when they're going to be done and what they're going to produce. Are they ahead of schedule or are they behind schedule? Okay. Right? Sometimes we get into this, the reason why I went down this teams, backlogs, working, tested software path a while ago, the three things that you need to be agile, is because most people focus on the ceremonies of Scrum or even the ceremonies of SAFe, but they forget that this cross-functional team with a stable velocity is the production unit within the organization. Okay. The backlog is the scope, right? And you're burning through a backlog at a stable velocity to achieve a predictable outcome on the backside. And we've gotten so focused on the processes associated with Agile that we're not building sufficiently deep backlogs, right? We're not sufficiently stabilizing teams and allowing them to establish a stable velocity. And so therefore, what we don't know, or we're not getting to a definition of done, so we can't start to anticipate in a time frame how much of the backlog we're going to get through, or how many sprints it's going to take to be able to deliver, right? And those problems are just exacerbated when you're dealing with things at scale. Okay. And so it's just it's a challenge, but if we're going to take something away, we have to give a credible story for what we're going to replace it with, so that these leaders can, effectively do their job. Okay.
And create that space for the middle.
For sure.
They have a path. Okay. What do you think is the biggest hurdle for somebody at the middle management level, just in general from what you've seen? What is the biggest blocker for them? Because leadership gets to get everything faster, and that's awesome. Teams get autonomy to be able to make decisions. What does the middle layer get?
You mean what's the biggest blocker?
What's the biggest blocker and what's the biggest benefit?
Well, so...
If I am that manager.
Well, so one of the things that I think is interesting, especially in large organizations that are trying to adopt something like Scrum or Lean Startup or whatever, is that the organizational structure is really fundamentally incongruent with delivering in that way. And so you can't really do Agile unless there's teams, and the teams own the technology and they have autonomy to be able to produce that working tested increment at the end of the sprint. So I think a lot of times, the teams can kind of, they can get involved in a project and they can do Agile stuff. Right. And maybe they're not as focused on stabilizing velocity or getting the size of the backlog or managing multiple teams worth of work or what's the aggregate throughput across multiple teams, right? They're not thinking in that space. Okay. So the teams can do a lot of really awesome Agile stuff, but the middle managers are sitting there going, well, what do I do with all this stuff, right? How does it roll up? How do I make commitments off of it, right? How do I do these things? And so like a big part of our transformation approach and what's in my story this afternoon is like how do we empower that management layer to be able to support this structure of complete cross-functional teams? Okay. How do they support feeding those teams with really ready backlog, start to be able to anticipate the project progress that's going to be made over time, and then be able to communicate responsibly to their leadership in a way they're highly confident in as to what's going to get done and when. Okay. And what I used to tell project managers back in the day when I was more hands-on coaching with them is in a lot of ways, in their old world, they were really reliant on over-specification and having to go to the developers and say, how far have you gotten? And I'm 90% done. Okay, well, what does that really mean, right? Is there 90% left to do? That kind of a thing. And so if you do Agile right at the team level or at scale, what you end up with is no ability to hide information. So you have a team, you know its burn rate, you know what it's going to cost over time, you understand understand its backlog or the fact that it doesn't have one. Right. You understand its velocity against that backlog. If you're adding things to the backlog, you can see the backlog size grow. If you're not burning down fast enough, you see it not making enough progress.
And if you're producing defects, you can see it.
Yeah, you can see it, right?
Yeah.
And so from a project management perspective, I would feel way safer managing a well-structured, well-run Agile project than I would a traditional waterfall project. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? In a traditional waterfall project, you have a greater illusion of control, right? So there's a sense that you have it understood and you're in control. And I think middle managers would rather have that than to basically say, just leave me alone, we're Agile, you're gonna get what you get when you get it, right?
Outcomes.
Yeah, don't look over here kind of a thing, right? Yeah. And so it's just all like really super nuanced stuff. And so what I'm gonna go through in the talk is the talk isn't about this is how you do Agile at scale, or this is exactly how you run an Agile transformation. I mean, we certainly have a point of view on that. What the talk is really going to be about is this is the world of things that I think you need to consider.
Okay.
Right? Because a lot of times people approach transformation like, okay, this is what it looks like at scale, and we're going to train you on the practices, but they're not addressing the organizational dysfunctions, or they're not addressing the dependencies, they're not addressing the business architecture issues, or the people issues. Who do I need to have in the right seats to be able to pull this off? And so what we've built is a framework for basically looking at the breadth of everything that needs to be considered, so that you can go, okay, I've got these business problems, I've got these organizational impediments, this is how I anticipate getting to this methodology using this change management approach, measuring these things with these people.
Okay.
Right? And so it's pretty comprehensive, and so it's going to go pretty fast.
Okay.
And I got like an hour and 15 minutes to talk about like days worth of stuff. Right? That's kind of the way I roll on these things. And so we're going to hit a ton of things at a high level. It's going to be a lot of drinking from the fire hose. But we're going to give our audience a lot of stuff to think about. Is what it comes down to. So
what if people can't make it, or what about the people that do come to the fire hose and leave knowing they spilled half the water?
Yeah.
Where can they find more about it?
So leadingagile.com, right, has a ton of resources. We're not videotaping this one. And I don't know if the conference is videotaping or not. I don't think I got a heads up on that. So it might be available on the Agile Alliance site. If I'm doing, the talk was pretty similar last year, and I'm pretty sure last year's talk was recorded and up on their site. We also did a white paper that's kind of a companion to this particular talk. And it's actually kind of cool because if you look at the layout of the talk, it's all color-coded and the icons are similar. So you grab the paper, you can kind of see, like if you grab the deck, you can look at the paper and it'll blow it out a little bit more.
Cool.
And there's little snips of video around. And I mean, this isn't, for anybody again who's been following our stuff, this is not a ton of net new content.
Right.
What it is, it's like, because what I really think we've done a good job of, and really candidly the community in general, is I think we've discovered some universal truths. And it's not like this stuff's changing every year, right? It's like we're getting better at doing it, and Leading Agile as a company has gotten really good at doing it. And so as we get better at doing it, it just, the principles that are behind it and the stuff that's talked about, it's like, I'm just like, we're actually within the company, we talk about it as a frame. It's like there's certain things that we think we've discovered that are pretty true. And it's not like they're immutable or that you can't have a conversation.
Sure.
But it's like the starting place isn't challenge it, right? And so this talk for us is kind of like the core frame of what it is that we do as a consulting practice. And so because we're not a safe shop or a less shop or dad shop or whatever, right? We walk in with this framework and we look at the organization and we say, okay, business drivers, all these different things, and we craft a transformation strategy that is very unique to that particular organization and what it's trying to accomplish, right? No dogma about where it should be, or like we're super pragmatic, right? And so what I'm going to share with everybody is just this is the core thinking tool that we use as we engage some of these Fortune 100, Fortune 10 type companies. So, yeah.
Cool. You have time for one more?
Oh, absolutely, man. I'm here as long as you want me to be here.
So companies growing.
Yeah.
And I mean, across the Agile space, finding talented people has been very challenging.
Yeah, very challenging, right?
Coming to this talk today, people will get a sense of our approach, or some beginnings of a sense of it. And I know that we've got a lot of spots open for senior level coaching transformation.
Like 25 or something we're trying to hire for right now. Yeah.
So how would you describe, in your opinion, the ideal candidate for one of those? Like, what are you looking for?
Yeah. Well, so that's really nuanced, right? So one of the things that when you've been around a long time, but you weren't here in the very, very early days, like when we very first started leading Agile, like I really envisioned a world where like everything was super flat, right? A bunch of coaches, all operating as peers, on engagements, just doing great work, self-organizing, right? All that kind of stuff. And what you find is that when you get into the messiness of engagements, you need a lot of different kinds of roles. And you find there's some people that are very good and are passionate about team level practices or program level practices, and they're practice coaches, right? And they're great at that, and they can do it all day long. There's an aspect of what I call like engagement orchestration, where, breaking down the work, managing expectations, helping to identify outcomes, getting people engaged in activities to deliver outcomes for the organization. Yeah. And then there's people that have to be capable of holding court with executives, understanding executive concerns, creating space on the engagement, creating safety for people on the engagement. Right. So there's different roles and different aptitudes, and so one of the things.
And no one would have all three of those, probably.
Well, I mean, possibly, right? Okay. But it's like, but you almost get into a point where sometimes, like I remember when leading Agile was just me 9 years ago, dancing between working with the team and then walking into the executive's office and being able to hold that high level conversation. There's people that can do that. Sometimes at really large scale, right? There's just not enough time in the day to be able to manage all those different things, right? So there's people that are capable of all of it, but way harder to find, right? Okay. And so as we've gotten better at identifying the kinds of people that are good working and leading Agile, we're doing tons of things with like personality profiling, looking at different behaviors over time, looking at different motivations, and it's like we've created a pretty fascinating pattern for like what a really senior consultant looks like, what one of those orchestration consultants look like, what a team level person looks like, how they deal with emotion versus logic, control versus non-control, emotional intelligence.
And there's a bunch of tests we have to take.
It's crazy,
to work
right? And really candidly, for anybody who's watching this that's been through our interview process, it's pretty rigorous. And I want to say we're at about a 2% hit rate. I mean, we interview like 100 people to pick 2, right? So it's becoming kind of a small club, and it's really difficult. So I don't know if we've narrowed the aperture too far. Okay. Maybe we need to widen it as we get some of our processes get better established. But it's like every level has a different set of stuff. And I think sometimes people think...
And all the levels are needed.
Well, they're all needed, and I think sometimes, and like the really unfortunate thing is like sometimes like you'll get a really, really smart, capable agilist, right, but we don't think that they have the right emotional intelligence or resilience or energy or the right drivers to be able to succeed in the environment we're going to be able to put them in. Okay. And so the hardest thing is when you have somebody who's so deeply knowledgeable, but we don't believe that they're going to be able to influence at the right level or in the right way. And so that's a bit of the black art that we've discovered is like, what are the right personality attributes so we can put people in a position where they're most likely to be successful. Okay. And so we're going to go into a little bit of that, and I'm going to talk a little bit, if we have time, about like the evolution and like what we've learned. Okay. Because back in the day, it used to be like, man, if you're a smart agilist, you're really active in the community, out speaking, you get the job. You kind of pass the asshole test, right? That kind of a thing. You could get a job. And then we'd find that some of those people were great people, super knowledgeable, but they would go onto an engagement and just not be able to hold space with an executive. Yeah. And it's like executives, like especially even if they're supportive, they don't have a ton of time or a ton of patience. And you got to get in and you got to get exactly to the right point, give them the right information, demonstrate the right progress, right? And you've got like 2 or 3 minutes to make an impression. And if you don't make that impression like that fast, like you might not get a second chance.
And make the impression based on our model, our approach.
Well, yeah, right. So that's the thing. And so that's a little bit of a black art that we deal with, and just So it's like you got to find the right people with the right background and experience, but nobody, unless you've worked here, is really immersed in like our transformation framework.
Right.
And so what you've got to do is find really, really credible, smart people that are bought into what we're doing. And then we've got about a 30-day, pretty intensive onboarding program that's, pairing and mentoring with people on the ground. And, we're starting to find ways to, bring people in ahead of time so they can learn things faster. Right? So it's just really interesting. And so that's been like my journey is, as I was telling somebody today, like there's a lot of days I feel less like an Agilist or less like an Agile thought leader and more like a guy that's just trying to figure out how to build a company to actually do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Because
you're both.
Yeah, you're both, right? So you got to pay attention to marketing, you got to pay attention to sales, you got to pay attention to finance and all these different things, and onboarding and talent, and it's all got to come together in a way where you can walk into these engagements and be very, very credible with the kinds of folks. And so like in some of the engagements, we're having some success with engaging some people that are in the company already, or even with other consultancies and partnering with those guys to be able to create like an integrated kind of change transformation program. But it's interesting, right? So kind of a consulting, that fearless change leader profile is often different than an internal, employee profile, right? They have different motivations and goals and stuff. So yeah, it's just fascinating, man. It's been a journey. It's been very cool.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time.
Happy to do it, Dave, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Wait, the weird question.
Oh, weird question of the day.
All right.
Okay, what do you got?
You're going to be trapped on an island. You only get one AC/DC record.
Ooh. This is actually good timing for this question because I just actually was just kind of looking through, right?
Okay.
And so...
And to me, I believe that this is a question everybody has an answer to, and it's a non-changing answer.
It's either, so I'm on the fence, right? So like Back in Black or Highway to Hell, right?
Oh, okay.
Isn't that I'm picturing, I think I got the album. I know Back in Black for sure. I think I'm going Back in Black.
All right.
Back in Black.
I'm Power Age, but...
You're Power Age? Oh, that's a little, that's
I'm
like
older.
new school, right? Power Age is like new school, isn't it?
No, it's older.
Is it older than that?
Yeah.
Then what am I, okay, so then,
because that's
clearly,
still...
right?
I could be wrong.
I saw AC/DC in concert when I was like 16.
I could
and they
be
haven't
wrong.
been like super on my radar since. They just come on the classic rock stations and I'm all in.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
awesome.
this was good.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks a lot. Keep watching all week long. We're going to be doing interviews, if I can keep talking, here in the Leading Agile booth at Agile 2019. Thanks.
See you guys.